Hello, my name is Allen Speegle. I am so glad that you're with me today for our weekly podcast. I just want to give you just a little overview of myself and my lovely wife, Janice. We began our life together in 1975, high school sweethearts and actually middle school sweethearts, and married 3 months out of high school. We now have 2 daughters, 7 grandchildren, 2 sons-in-laws, or we consider them our sons. In 1980, I gave my life to Jesus. And 1981, I felt called to ministry. And since then, we pastored for well over 30 years, spent almost 21 years just outside of Orlando. We started Safe Harbor International Network of Ministers, Journey School of Ministry, and GraceChannel.com. And it's our prayer that we can take what we've experienced and help you experience a better walk in life. And also, if you're called to ministry, that ministry will not be something that wears you out like it did me in 1989. Well, today I want to talk to you about judging and being judged. You know, the Bible has a lot to say about that subject. And I want to start out just by saying, what you believe about God. Now, think about this with me. What you believe about God is revealed more in your relationships than it is anywhere else in your life. What you believe about God, it will cause you to either be more patient, loving, kind, gentle, or harsh, mean, pushy, gotta have my way, because of a life filled with insecurities. One of the greatest earthly possessions that we have are relationships in our life. And if you do not have a healthy, proper self-worth and self-image, and we've talked about that in some of our other podcasts, if you do not have a healthy self-worth and self-image, then you're going to try to use the people around you to get you to feel the way that only God can make you feel. I lived much of my life, now hang with me, as an angry person. And I'm talking about getting to the place where I would literally just about black out. I would start seeing stars and birds and sometimes have to sit down. I would come back to myself, and I had knocked holes in stuff and gotten in fights and just a whole number of destructive things that came out of that. Well, when I became a believer in 1980, I thought my anger issues were going to go away. But what I found very quickly is not only did I still have my anger issues, but I was an angry believer, that because of the things that I heard about God. And I didn't have a proper image of who God is. Therefore, I couldn't see myself the way that God sees me. Jesus was asked a question one time, and they said, Lord, what's the greatest commandment? What is the great? If you had to put all of the commandments up together, what would you say the greatest is? Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart and mind. And then he said, and your neighbor as you do yourself. And if you'll do those two things, if you'll do that, all of the other parts of the law will take care of themselves. Now, we don't keep the law to become righteous. We keep the law because we are righteous, and we do it without even thinking about it. It's not an effort. Love fulfills, as the scripture says, fulfills the law. So when I became a believer, I took my anger from the world into the church, and the version of God that I saw made me an angry believer. It made me an angry Christian, and I ended up, preaching a lot of things that I wish I could go back and redo. Paul said this in Ephesians 1 in the Message Bible, verse 4. It says, long before God laid earth's foundation, he had us in mind, and that he had settled on us as a focus of his love. Listen to this, to be made whole and holy by his love. The only thing that could drive the anger and bitterness out of my heart was the love of God. As I began to get whole, my anger began to go away. I don't know of a date on the calendar. I can't say, July the 13th of 1986 or anything like that. I don't know when it happened. But at some point along the way, as I began to get a hold of the realities of God's no strings attached, non-conditional, no conditions whatsoever to his love, I stopped at some point being an angry person. Now, I want you to think about that. He said to be made whole and holy by his love. God chose us as the bullseye, the target of his love. And he settled that before the foundation of the world. Before you and I were ever a being, God had decided and he had made a plan that we would come into fullness of relationship with him through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus and our believing upon that. Okay, so now listen to this. In 1 John chapter 4, let's see, it's verse number 9, I believe it is. It says, in this was manifest the love of God toward us, because that God sent his only Son into the world, that we might live through him. This is a demonstration, the writer of 1 John says, of God's love for us, the fact that he was willing to send his Son into the world so you and I could be in a love relationship with him, not just as God, but God as a Father. The greater need that we have, listen to this, for self-worth, the more hypersensitive we become to the actions of others. In other words, we have thin skin. If we do not have a proper self-worth, we take everything personal. We're going to talk about some of that in a minute. And we interpret everything that happens in life, everything other people say, through the light of our existing self-need and our self-worth. We interpret everything that way. Low self-worth. I heard my friend Jim Richards say this. Low